Hi everyone. Our next workshop is on writing clear, concise thesis statements, and I think it's probably a very important workshop, if not the most important workshop, to practice right before we begin any sort of writing assignment in this class. So today's workshop is going to consist of 8 practices. What I recommend you do is open up a separate Google Docs blank page and go step by step. So I would recommend that as I review each step, you press pause on my tutorial, go to your Google Docs page and type out your own practice. And then you will resume the rest of the video and continue like that. That's probably the best way to do this workshop, and I will indicate when I want you to pause the video, go do your work, and then of course come back and we will just resume where we left off. So again, please make sure you do have a blank Google Docs page open. It could also be Microsoft Word page, whatever program you're using, and then I will explain as we go along what I am asking you to do. All right, so let's begin. First of all, I think it's important to know what a thesis statement is. So I have a definition up here for you guys. First of all, a thesis is a claim. All thesis statements are based on some opinion. So it's important to remember that. A thesis statement isn't just facts, like the facts are necessary for your evidence, but that's not what a thesis is. A thesis is supposed to reflect your position. So what is your idea? What is your assertion? What is your statement? So if I ask you a controversial question, your thesis, your claim is going to be your opinion as far as, where you stand in terms of that particular issue. Now, a claim is not just enough. You have to have also a rationale. So the rationale is your reasoning, your explanation, and your support. So I think, when you put the two together, you have the basis of a thesis statement. And let me show you an example right now. Here's an example, and the red indicates my claim, and the blue indicates my rationale. The black word here, because, is really a key word, because the word because helps for me to develop some sort of rationale. It's actually a cool word to use when you are very new at thesis writing. So if you're not confident, you're like, I don't know how to write a thesis, try to use because. Why? Because the word answers the question why or how. And that's important to know when you're trying to create a rationale. Okay, so here's an example. Flag burning is a patriotic act. Now, if we stop there and we analyze again what a claim is supposed to be, a claim is supposed to be an opinion. And if you look here, this is an opinion. Some people might agree and some people might disagree. That's what makes it a legitimate opinion. Flag burning is a patriotic act simply because it represents the freedom each U.S. citizen does and should have. Now notice, this is my reasoning. My explanation of why flag burning is patriotic is because of the freedom that I would like to argue in my essay. Now, a lot of you might be wondering, shouldn't I have 3 rationales? Because in high school, we're taught to write in the 5-paragraph format, and the 5-paragraph format means that you have to have 3 reasons. No, not necessarily. Your reasons could be broad enough where it could just be 1, like this one right here. Your reasons might be 2 reasons. They might even be 6 reasons. So please feel free to explore as many rationales as you want in your writing. Number 2, this is the second sample that I have for you. Again, the red reflects the claim. The blue reflects the rationale. Again, I use the word because just to make it easier for me to create a preliminary thesis. Violent video games do not necessarily cause real-life violence. This is a pretty controversial issue. A lot of people argue both sides. And again, this red area is my claim, and it just shows you that it's an opinion. It's not a fact. It's my position in this issue. Now, going on, it says violent video games do not necessarily cause real-life violence because family values have a stronger influence over the actions of young adults than the media. And that is my main rationale. So notice that my main rationale is going to be on family values. That is my main support for why I think what I think. And these, you guys, are just sample thesis statements that I created just to give you an overview of what I'm looking for in a class like this. Now, there's 3 rules you need to remember when writing a thesis, especially a strong thesis. Rule number 1, a thesis is supposed to predict. It kind of foreshadows what's to come. So it not only gives your idea, like your position, but it suggests how you plan on developing it. You don't want to give away too much, but then you also don't want to give too little and confuse your readers. Number 2, a thesis is meant to control. So basically, it puts your ideas in the order of presentation. For example, if I have 3 rationales in my thesis, that those 3 rationales, whatever order I put them in, is the order that I need to develop in my essay. So if, let's say, rationale number 1, it comes first, and rationale number 1 is on freedom, and rationale number 2 is on religion, well, I have to develop freedom first, and then I have to develop religion second. So it controls you. It basically helps you organize your ideas. Number 3, a thesis, a strong one, is supposed to obligate you. It forces you to remain on topic. This is so important. Sometimes I find that my students, a lot of times, they lose track of what it is they wanted to argue, and then they end up contradicting themselves, or they end up going kind of tangent from where they started. So these 3 rules I think are important. Maybe you might want to write this down in your notes just so you do not forget that you must follow these 3 rules whenever writing a thesis statement. I also think it's important to kind of explore some of these common mistakes that people make when writing thesis statements. And this is just like a little list of what to avoid. So number 1, your thesis shouldn't be a fragment. It should always be a complete sentence. If you confuse your readers by giving them a fragment of what you want to say, that's not really starting off on the right foot, if you know what I mean. You don't want to create confusion, and you don't want to create ambiguity when you're writing a thesis. A thesis shouldn't be a question. Now, I know that there are rhetorical questions which are given as a way to incite curiosity and to just make your writing more interesting, but try to save that for later on. Don't do that in your thesis, because again, if you ask a question without giving your firm claim and rationale, again, you might create confusion among your readers. Number 3, do not write an overly broad thesis. An overly broad thesis sounds like it might be like a book-length project. You don't want to, if you know the expression, bite off more than you can chew. That's important to remember. Number 4, thesis should not have unrelated ideas. Of course, this is important because you want to create a logically strong argument. Now, number 5 is debatable. It says thesis should not have I think or I feel. Many teachers agree with this rule. I personally don't. I think it's wonderful for students to write I think or I feel. I have no problem with that. The reason why I left step 5 in the list is because, again, it's not just about me. Other teachers might not like for you to repeat what you think and what you feel so constantly. My high school teacher told me the reason why she didn't want me to write I think or I feel is because it's a given. She was like, I already know this is what you think because it's your essay. It's a reflection of your perspective. So that made total sense to me. So I think it's a good rule to remember that be confident and be assertive when you write. You don't have to constantly repeat I think or I feel. But am I going to penalize you for using these phrases? Not at all. 6 and 7 are important. A thesis should not be vague. Now, the word vague means unclear. Something that is vague creates confusion. Now, what does 6 mean? 6 refers to vague ideas. So if your idea seems like it can't be proven or it's hard to understand, again, you're creating vagueness. Also, vague language is another problem. We actually have another workshop that's going to be about vague language, so stay tuned. You will definitely be practicing that some more. Step 8 says thesis should not be in figurative language. So it shouldn't be written in a poetic way. It should be written in more of an analytical way. This is another one that's debatable. I personally do not mind figurative language at all. I think it's beautiful. I think adding poetry to your language is beautiful. But again, it's not just about me. Other teachers might not like it, which is why I added this in here. Just as, a little precaution. Just know that I don't mind, but the next teacher after me might not like it. And number 9 is important. A thesis should not be nonsensical. Of course, a thesis has to make sense, and it has to be provable. That's ultimately the goal of a thesis. So I think this page is a nice little guide if you do want to refer to it and maybe take notes on it. Again, I don't necessarily agree with number 5, and I don't necessarily agree with number 8, but it's still good to keep this in mind as you are composing your thesis statements. All right, you guys, I'm going to stop here. This is the end of my setup. And then from this point on, I'm going to begin our practices. So once again, I just want to remind you that I would like you to have some kind of a blank Word document open and go ahead and label all 8 practices. I really want clarity and organization in this workshop. So go ahead and write practice number 1, practice number 2, practice 3, and so on, all the way to 8. There will be 8 total practices that I will be explaining in the next video.